Good morning and welcome to OTB AM. It's 7:30. Shane, how are you getting on?
Morning, how are things?
Colm, good morning to you. Welcome back to the studio.
Adrian, good morning.
You were trying to, he forces us before every show on a Friday morning to indulge him in some nonsense or other. And this morning, Shane, it was about, can people guess what my ring walk was for my wedding?
Apparently this is a thing before the dinner. People walk into a
this is
song.
news to Shane Hannon.
Well, I'm not married. I'm the only one in the room.
Have you ever been to a wedding?
I have. I've only been to like 3 weddings.
What is
No
a wedding?
way!
Yeah, 3 or 4 weddings.
I would have thought you were.
I'm going to be a best man for the first time next year, which is. And I've never even been to a stag, and here I am trying
Name
to
your
organise
3 weddings.
Name 3 weddings.
Name your 3 weddings that you've been to.
All cousins. All cousins.
The best man gig is the worst gig going.
Is
it's
it?
the worst gig on the day, Shane.
Oh, I'm supposed to be.
Because there's a big.
Calm me down here.
Well, you're a funny guy, so you'll be fine.
Yeah,
but like, you're the only person. And who of the group of people that will give a speech, who the crowd are sort of like, who sit back and fold their arms and go, "Come on, make me laugh now. Come on now, tell me some stories." There, everybody else, there's goodwill towards. You're willing, you're encouraging. They're laughing when it's not even funny. Whereas the best man, tough gig.
You need the right amount of jokes and seriousness as well, don't you?
Yeah.
There's a balance there.
You can't have too much to drink before you do it.
I already know my first joke. Jeez, I'm not used to talking into microphones.
Hey, it'd be like.
Yeah.
No,
is anyone
OTB AM?
Is anyone there? Yeah. Anyone? Sports? No.
I was just looking at Jojo's face as soon as Adrian did that little gag there. I was like, what are you doing? Stop. Get off the microphone. But this all stemmed anyway. I was at a wedding last weekend, and the bride and groom, their entrance song was "Put 'Em Under Pressure." I've never seen atmosphere like it at the wedding. It
Fantastic.
was unbelievable.
What a shout.
It was such a great shout. And actually, when the first bar of the song played, everybody looked around being like, "Oh, that's brilliant."
Yeah.
And then the atmosphere rose and rose and rose. And they waited to come out. So the best man and the groom's people came out first. And then they waited to come out for the first bar of the course. Oh my God. Goosebumps now thinking
Shout
about
out to the couple.
Shout out to the couple, John and Laura, having a great honeymoon as we speak in Barbados.
Not watching us, then I presume. He was sort of shuffling through YouTube then to force us to listen to the song that he had.
And ads on YouTube, like it was perfectly timed. They would have started the show with my entrance song from the wedding, but
What was it?
It's Curtis Mayfield, "Move On Up."
Give us a bar of it there.
I can't do it justice. And normally I have no problem singing, but I just couldn't. Like,
Did yourself and your wife come to that song agreeably, or was it one person was into it more than the other?
we actually had California Soul selected right up until the week of the wedding, and then we played California Soul over and over again in the kitchen, and we're like, it kind of dies out a bit after 30 seconds, so we need something else. And then "Move On Up" just came.
We don't
like
like
that.
Colm to analyse something so deeply.
Yeah,
Like
doesn't surprise me
And
whatsoever.
we played it incessantly in the kitchen to the point where it started to annoy us, and then we didn't have it anymore.
so I know it's a great song. I highly recommend people look it up now. "Move On Up," Curtis Mayfield. Hopefully the YouTube ads won't
you
get
sing
you.
it for us there a little
Just
bit?
literally just ask me that. I can't.
He won't. I'd say
I
it's
can't.
more to
So
the
just
point.
reiterate.
I actually have it here. Look, it's playing, but it's on
Right,
silent.
well, that's.
I sent it to the WhatsApp group there, so whatever you want there, you can listen to it.
Manchester United last night. I thought, I was sort of. I really enjoy a Thursday evening where there's a Europa League match on or a Premier League match on, and you can sit down, you have the laptop out, you're doing a bit of prep for this morning, you're watching the game. And I thought I'd sort of half tuned out for a while, to be honest. They were 2-0 up, they were cruising, it could have been 3-0, 4-0. I thought this would be a straightforward conversation with the lads tomorrow. But what the hell happened to them? Last 8 minutes, 10 minutes.
It's just bizarre, wasn't it?
Fell asunder.
Like what could go wrong will go, and shall go wrong.
Two
right now.
OGs.
Because the bits are the first half, you're thinking, this is brilliant. Two
Could
left
have had a hat-trick in 17 minutes. and then-
Sabelzer, eh?
Yeah, and Terrell Malacia could have made it 3-0 in the 82nd minute and took one touch too many. And it looked happy out. Like I went to bed after an hour and watched the rest of it on my phone and was like, this is going to be standard 2-0, maybe 3-0. And then Dave McIntyre woke me from my near sleep when Sophia got one back. He has a great voice, Dave McIntyre, for commentary. He did his job exactly because I was about to nod off and he was, oh my God, Sophia have scored. And then I was glued to it. And they could have won it in the end. Strange game because United started so well.
Yeah.
And Anthony Martial was brilliant when he dropped deep. That skill he did 2 showboats in one. Soccer AM would have a field day if they could show it. The nice little flick twice. And they scored from that. And then he set up the second goal directly with that through ball. And then Jadon Sancho, who was very poor, he scored after 30 odd seconds. It was disallowed. But there was loads of chances. And Sevilla were brutal.
Yeah.
Brutal. Like they're bottom half of La Liga. But it just goes to show that this the curse of the last 10 years of United and that culture is just not gone yet, is it, Shane?
No, you'd be concerned about them. And there was so much in that game to enjoy. Gonzalo Montiel diving every 2 seconds, going down and holding.
I thought Casemiro was going down and off.
He was a lot as well. And then there was a little argy-bargy, literally between Anthony and Argentina's Acuna. The little bit of a battle there, and they shook hands when Anthony was taken off. A bit of respect back and forth. And then just towards the end, you're thinking, what's going on? Like Bruno Fernandez's yellow card as well. He'll miss the second leg next week, and he got a nothing yellow card for handball that was maybe... The ball was smacked at him from 6 inches away, and he was turned the other way. So how that was a yellow card is beyond me.
Well, I think the referee deemed that it was your man was having a pop on goal and the arm was up, and
I think a free kick was sufficient. You alright?
Yeah.
Funny bun.
Yeah.
Nothing funny about it.
Funny now.
Yeah.
And then the Lisandro Martinez Achilles injury is that was
what I'm working with.
That was the most worrying one, because I think even Paul Scholes speaking after the match, and he was like, look, United should be fine. This is a crap Sevilla team. They're 13th. United can in La Liga, and United can go over there next week and still get through the tie. But then you look at Rashford being out, Martinez being out now. There's a concern around Varane after the knock last night as well. Like Malacia's defending for the goal was
brutal,
horrendous.
But
there's nothing Maguire could have done for this.
Maguire.
It couldn't have been anybody else.
There's literally nobody else in the world of football that would happen to. The header's going out for a corner,
and it's impossible to be too critical of, I would say, Malacia for the way the goal was scored, not the missing, the getting rid of it.
Oh, that was also
the second
freak
bit was
of nature,
freakish.
Yeah,
but the Harry Maguire bit, like, there's a split second there where you do see most footballers kind of have some reaction, get out of the way, rejig themselves. It does often end up in the net either way, but with him, it was a total shock that the ball had hit him straight in the head.
It's like he reacts so late.
No, I mean, there's nothing he could do. There's nothing he could do.
I'm fairly sure that's
it
true.
would only happen to Maguire that the ball would go in.
Yeah.
If that had hit Martinez or Varane's head or Phil Jones's head, like it wouldn't have got in. It wouldn't have got in.
It's easy to rush to a lot of conclusions about what happened last night. I couldn't leave with any other sense than, like, it was really unfortunate. Like, sometimes you just have to leave a game and go, well, that was really unfortunate. Like, 2 OGs, they should have been, like, Anthony's hit the upright at some point or another.
It's a great effort, actually, inside of the top post.
It's a repeat of the effort that he has, like, 4 or 5 times every single game.
The Aryan Rabbit of modern football,
cuts in off the left, curls it around. He's going to score a load of whirlies, but he's also going to miss about 99 out of 100 chances.
I have no problem with those efforts on goal. He could have passed that, but it was a good effort. I thought it was a good decision to shoot because he's so good in his left foot.
And then he used all 5 subs, so he couldn't.
Down to 10 men with Martinez, with his sound Argentinian teammates helping him off. The Sevilla lads were delighted to get him off. It's like their best defender.
Because there was a moment after an hour when he makes the triple sub, and Weghorst is one of them, and United are 2-0 up still, and Weghorst presses Bono in the goal and forces a goal kick, and everyone's cheering, going, yep, a bit of pressing. And you're thinking at that point, well, United are going to win 3 or 4 at least nil here. So the fact that it finished 2-2 is a disaster, to be honest.
Well, Dave and Jerry Armstrong in commentary again were saying they were sharing their surprise that Bruno Fernandez was taken off when he was the 62nd minute, and it was 2-0. It was very comfortable. And in fairness to them, that was in hindsight. They said it then and there when United were very comfortable, and Fernandez was not happy about being substituted. And now United have put themselves in a difficult position. I don't know if the triple change mightn't have been the absolute catalyst for what happened, because for 20 more minutes afterwards, United continued to be dominant. It was only the last 5 minutes or so where it all went haywire. But now what's happened is the return leg's next Thursday, and then a couple of days later they have the FA Cup semi-final against a very, very informed Brighton. So they put themselves under pressure.
Well, Sevilla seemed to be this bogey team. Like I was I see what you did there, full circle. I was in Old Trafford a few years ago. Was it 2017 when Sevilla knocked United out of the Champions League on that infamous
Jose
night?
Mourinho,
And like the atmosphere that night was putrid. One of the worst I've ever experienced at a match. But like the point was made last night. Sevilla, every time they've reached the quarterfinals of the Europa League, they've gone on to win it. And you have that fear now that something's going to click into gear for them between now and the end of the season, because La Liga is essentially done for them. You know, it's now about avoiding relegation. I think they're 5 points off the bottom 3. So next week is huge.
Momentum is with them.
They are the ultimate Europa League side, aren't they? And I was only reminded of that when they got one back last night. I was like, Sevilla win this thing every other year.
Themselves and Tottenham, as Bobby Dwyer, good morning to you, Bobby, is picking up on a comment that I made yesterday, saying Manchester United are a bit of a spoof club, to be fair, Adrian.
That's what he's done there.
Lads, sorry, I'm just watching the Malacia own goal back again. It's unreal how that happens. I'd say 99 times out of 100 doesn't go in.
It's a point that's picked up by Nigel Gallagher. He says, I like laughing at United as much as the next Sky, but they were just they not just extremely unfortunate in the last few minutes last night, albeit from a bad Malacia mistake, and they should still go through. I'm with you up until that last bit, because I do think there's a bit of that momentum that could be with Sevilla. We shall see how that plays out over the next while. Here's what's coming up for you over the course of the show this morning. We've Ronan O'Gara live on the line from La Rochelle after a couple of very interesting weeks for his club, and I'm sure an interesting month or so ahead as well. So we'll talk to Ronan in a few minutes' time. Art McCarrick is from Motorsport Ireland and will join us just after 8 o'clock this morning to look back on the life. Awful news yesterday with the passing of Craig Breen in testing for a rally at the weekend, and we will talk to Art McCarrick about the life and times of Craig Breen after 8 o'clock this morning. Ken Doherty is going to be with us, Shane. What's he...
Previewing the greatest sporting event of the year, the World Snooker Championship. 17 days of paradise. I'm heading over next week, so...
I knew you would sell it better than I would.
Yeah.
Anna Caplis will talk to us about the resumption of the Women's Six Nations this weekend, and also obviously to reflect on that story in the Telegraph yesterday and the Greg McWilliams comments that followed. So Anna Caplis has been in the squad up top very recently, will be with us just before 9, and then Noradine Chowdhury will be with us at 9:10 this morning. He's basically become a friend of the show over the last couple of months, and an expert on all things United. Has just, so we'll ask him obviously about events last night, but much more importantly, that has just published his book Inshallah United, and we will talk about that. Really interesting read just after 9 this morning. And then Fiona Thomas, who was on the show last night, she was the author of that piece in the Telegraph in relation to the RFU, and that will be with you with Richie from 9:30 this morning. I did want to touch on one of the other big topics of the week as well, that's cropped up in a few different spheres in relation to abuse. We talk about it obviously being a social media phenomenon, and it is, but it's also all around us. It's everywhere we look. We've all been in company. Someone has said something that challenges our urge for inclusiveness, and we've all awkwardly shuffled when that joke gets told, that anecdote about this one time that gets rolled out, and that meme drops in your WhatsApp, and we've all awkwardly shuffled and we've all been silent. And we weren't expecting it at that time, of course, so we weren't prepared, and we were silently protesting inside. But your silence was no good to Lee Chin last weekend, or the Leitrim lads, or the Irish women's rugby team, who were told who gives a fuck about women's rugby. When Jason Sherlock said during the week that it was isolating. It was isolating and it was embarrassing. Did you hear when he said that? Can we be open to hear it? Isolating and embarrassing. J.O. said that he was really encouraged by the response of Lee Chin's teammates. They didn't shuffle and they weren't silent. They were straight on it. They called it out, and it gives licence to the rest of us to take our lead from them. And it's okay to learn in the job for us, and it's to learn from that, to call it out wherever we see it, because we will see it, and you will see it, and you should expect it. We changed our culture in this country over the last number of years. We changed our culture with the smoking ban. We've had major societal revolution in the last 15, 20 years. We've given a basic human right to our LGBTQ plus community. We've dragged a church kicking and screaming to account over the most awful abuses. And now we can do all of that for a group that we know feel, because we've been told they feel isolated and embarrassed. So it can be done. The GA's ban of less than a year for racism or for racist abuse won't kick it out. Jason says that we shouldn't tolerate it when we see it, because it's isolating and it's embarrassing. And whatever the abuse, because we will see it and we should expect it, and we shouldn't be silent. And they were my thoughts on the bits that crept up during the week. So if you have any thoughts on that, do fire them into us, and we are happy to read them out this morning one way or the other. So anyway, we'll go back to the game last night, because there's a lot to pick through. The injuries, obviously. There was a big aspect to the narrative, obviously, leading into the game last night about Marcus Rashford and how exactly Manchester United were going to cope with that. And for 83 minutes, I think most people were thinking, well, this is going to be absolutely fine. There's nothing to see here. They can cruise through to the end of the season. On this form, they're going to secure Champions League football. I felt a little bit with the Chelsea game earlier in the week. There was a large period of that where I thought, actually, Chelsea are going to be fine. Frank Lampard in his lovely natty baseball jacket, he's got this thing covered. And I felt a big part about that. Like, I do think that we can be in sport very quick to rush to major conclusions on the basis of a game. And I mean, for the basis of most of last night, injuries notwithstanding, they'll be grand.
I think so. When you mentioned it, Colm, like Anthony Martial was good. I thought very good, in fact, in parts last night, especially in his involvement in the goal. And even when he moved out wide to collect the ball and went deep, Sabitzer pulled into that number 9 role and kind of covered it off quite nicely and got into those positions where he could get on the end of passes from the likes of Bruno and himself, Martial. It was working. Don't know if it works anymore with Weghorst. I think that is over possibly. Now Weghorst will probably still score maybe one or two.
Chen was the question. I know that you were
possibly
in
not.
a Parky Sun sort of like.
No, never with Weghorst. He was okay in like the likes of the Carabao Cup final and was involved in different moments, but his goal scoring numbers just aren't good enough. But yeah, I think there's a lot to be optimistic about for United from last night. De Gea's performance was pretty good. He had some flaky moments recently. We mentioned Martial, Anthony as well. He can be the most frustrating footballer in the world, and yet he's involved in so much that's positive in an attacking sense. Maybe his end product leaves a little bit to be desired as well. But I think there's a number of positive things. And when you see Martinez hobbling off, and you're thinking, like, they've Forest away this weekend, they've the FA Cup semi-final, they've potentially a Europa League to play out as well, all the way to a final, and it looks like Juventus possibly, if not Sporting Lisbon, in the semi-finals for United if they're to get past Sevilla next week, and then they run into the season where you're trying desperately to get a top 4 finish. That Martinez injury could be significant, especially when he's that left-sided centre half as well. He's kind of just blocked off that position really nicely. You probably bring in Lindelof possibly and move people over. Shaw will slot into where Malacia is, and Malacia just didn't fill anyone with confidence, I don't think, last night. So while there are negatives, I think they're still very much in the tie, and you'd expect United to get through still.
I think Harry Maguire, if everyone's fit now after Martinez's absence and Varane's fit, let's say, I think Maguire will be the chosen one because, again, to reference Dave McIntyre for the third time at the top of the show, he made a very important point, which I didn't realise, that Maguire, in the last 10 starts that he's represented United, they've won all 10 games. And you obviously represent Harry Maguire with a bit like calamity. And I was just saying to Phil outside in the office beforehand, just like looking at the papers here, and Harry Maguire splashed all over the back pages of the English papers. He just has that face of sadness and disappointment that
it's a face he does very well, and he has it even when they win.
He owns it, and I just can't help but feel sorry for this multi-millionaire. I just can't help it. Like, he seems like a good guy, and he's always in the wheelhouse of misfortune. Was
I reading too much into it? Or was so with the Malacia slip that led to the goal? Obviously, they replayed on Virgin last night, where they without any commentary over it, where you have De Gea shouting "Away!" You were asleep at this point, and
they woke me up,
and you were like, and then you could see De Gea after the game. He's like storming. My mind stormed down the tunnel, really annoyed about something, and then you could see, was it Fernandez and Anthony who were having a chat coming off, and they were doing the whole I have something really important to say here, but I can't say too much. I can't be seeing anybody. But it felt like they were gesturing about I could be reading too much into it, but it felt like they were gesturing about Malacia's slip, and how could he do that? Like, his teammates must be going, I've lost total faith in him.
Yeah, he had a terrible time. But even the decisions of the ref, I mentioned the Bruno yellow card, but and I actually think the ref got this one right. The Lamela incident where they were checking the VAR possible red card. I don't think he stamped down enough in order to say that was dangerous. At half time, some of the pundits were even saying it could have been a red card. But look, it was one of those. You're not going to complain if it's not.
Yeah.
But I think you could see by Ten Hag's face when the first goal went in. His face didn't change from the second goal, and he knew that this was a wave that was just coming.
It is a bit concerning, Shane. I would say, it was interesting hearing your kind of overview of the season so far. And for me, it's like, look, undoubtedly Eric Ten Hag has improved the situation at Manchester United. I don't think anyone can really argue with that too much. I know the points difference actually from this time last season isn't actually too significant,
huge, no.
But it's just what he's represented and what he's brought, a bit of structure compared to Ralph Rangnick last season. It's chalk and cheese. But the concerning thing I would say, if you're of the Manchester United point of view, is that they seem to have peaked mid-February, and ever since the League Cup final, comfortable win against Newcastle, they just haven't been convincing. And obviously there was the nadir of the 7-0 drubbing at Anfield against Liverpool, but even then in matches that they've won, like the 3-1 win against West Ham in the FA Cup, that was actually the first game after the Cup final, so you forgive them for a bit of sloppiness there. They weren't great. They repeated that scoreline in the following round of the FA Cup, 3-1 against Fulham. That's when Fulham lost Mitrovic, and their manager as well got sent off, and again they weren't too convincing. The last week's been better. They were decent against Everton in the 2-0 win. They beat Brentford 1-0 when Brentford were surprisingly poor.
Yeah.
So look, they've slightly improved in the last week or so, but the only fear, and I would say hopefully they'll replicate this, again from a United perspective, next season is that for 3/4 of the season they've been good after the power show the first 2 games of this campaign. But next season they probably need more stamina and an improved squad. Actually, there's still loads of areas of that team where United and Ayrton Haig must be looking at thinking we can do an awful lot better than this. Well, so I would say the report card for me is about a 7 out of 10 so far for United this season.
You're looking at a Kane or an Osimhen to come into that forward line. They obviously need a striker in that position. Like Jude Bellingham, all of a sudden Liverpool's not happening. He'd probably want to go to Man City or Real Madrid first, I'd imagine, but United are possibly a third choice there for Bellingham, you'd imagine.
I'll bring you into the back page of the Irish Independent here this morning, Shane. Bayern keen to swoop for Kane ahead of United bid.
Bayern?
Yeah. Miguel Delaney willing to test the uncertainty at Spurs by getting in ahead of United with a persuasive offer for Harry Kane. He says that it doesn't normally fit the youthful profile of a player that Bayern might like to bring in, but they'd be willing to make an exception for the 29-year-old. Could be tempted by that.
What do you mean?
England captain maybe might be the only sort of I need to be around. The FA put a little bit of pressure on.
Yeah, unless he wants to win a Champions League with Bayern or something potentially.
Yeah. Just before we go to Ronan O'Gara, who's here, ready to go.
Colm, yeah.
Shifty lad. Just played those 2 songs here, Colm. You and your boss went with the right decision. Good stuff. Curtis Mayfield, move on up. The song of the day.
Also Aidan Maloney saying that he was best man at 2 weddings and used the same scripted speech for both, just added a couple of jokes. It's a tight line to keep them just clean enough in front of the bride to be, and I presume the general audience. Nice bit of advice there for you, Shane. Keep it between the ditches, I think is really
right. So that's if anyone has any more best man speech advice, please send them my direction. At Shane Hannon 01 on Twitter. I'm pretty desperate. I've only got till November next year to get this ready.
November, 12 months.
November 2024. I think it's November. Sorry, folks, Evan and Aisling, if I got that wrong, but the wedding will be on next year anyway, and I'll be there.
Sure, look.
Colm, thanks a million for coming in. That
thanks
was
very much for having me.
Hugely enjoyable and entertaining,
so
and your music, the lads make it so easy. Your music,
you make it easy. Thank you so much for having me.